Sometimes, silence is louder than screaming. You are about to listen to an audio recording that was sealed by the state of Oregon for 12 years. It captures the final moments of a man named David Miller, alone in a house that wasn't his. What you hear in the background, it wasn't an intruder, it wasn't a wild animal. According to the police report, the house was completely empty, except for him. 911, what is your emergency? It's mimicking me. It knows what I'm going to say before I say it. To understand why this call is so terrifying, we have to go back to the beginning. The date was November 14th, 2011. The location, a remote fog-drenched property in the coastal town of Tillamook. David Miller was a 34-year-old audio engineer. He didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in monsters. He believed in acoustics, in sound waves, in things that could be measured and recorded. That's why, when his cousin offered him a cheap deal to house-sit a sprawling two-story cabin while she was away on business, David jumped at the chance. He saw it as the perfect getaway. He planned to spend the week testing out new high-frequency microphones he'd bought for work. He wanted to record the ambient noise of the forest, the rain, the wind, the creaking timber. But on the first night, the forest wasn't the only thing making noise. David set up his recording equipment in the living room. It was a wide room with vaulted ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows. He hit record at around 10 p.m. For the first 2 hours, the tape captured exactly what you'd expect. Rain, silence, the hum of the refrigerator. But then, at 12:03 a.m., something changed. On the recording, you can hear David shifting in his chair. He hears it too. The sound came from the hallway leading to the bedrooms. The problem was, David was alone, and the doors to the bedrooms were locked from the inside. He paused the recording and grabbed a flashlight. He checked the hallway. Nothing. He checked the locks. Still secure. He assumed it was just the house settling. Old wood, expanding and contracting in the cold. David sitting back in a leather chair, the glow of the audio monitors reflecting in his glasses. He hits record again. The next day, David woke up exhausted. He hadn't slept well. He kept dreaming that someone was standing over his bed, breathing. But when he reviewed the audio, he found something that made his blood run cold. Between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., there were sounds on the tape that he hadn't heard in real time. Sounds that were too quiet for the human ear, but his sensitive microphones had picked them up. It was whispering his name. But here is the first clue that something was terribly wrong. The whisper wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the room, specifically from the corner behind the sofa. David remembered sitting right there. He remembered the silence. He knew with 100% certainty that no one had been in that corner. That afternoon he tried to leave. He packed his bags, went to his car, and turned the key. The engine wouldn't turn over. It was dead. He tried his phone. No signal. He was miles from the nearest town, and the storm outside was getting worse. He was trapped. Night 2 fell. The darkness in that house felt heavier, like the air itself was turning into solid weight. David decided he wasn't going to sleep. He was going to stay awake. He was going to keep the lights on, and he was going to record everything. He sat in the center of the room, facing the hallway. At 1:15 a.m., the lights flickered, once, twice. Then they stayed on. At 1:20 a.m., David heard the breathing. It wasn't on the recording yet. It was in the room. A wet, rattling inhale and exhale coming from directly above him. Is someone there? I have a camera. I'm calling the cops. He was bluffing. The phone lines were down. But as he shined the flashlight at the ceiling, he saw it. The ceiling wasn't cracking. It was moving. Like water rippling in a pond. The plaster began to bulge downward. And pushing through the white plaster, he saw a patch of dark matted hair. Something was pushing through from the other side. David scrambled backward, knocking over his camera. The video feed went dark, but the audio kept running. This is where the story shifts from a break-in to something impossible. You can hear David running. You can hear him slamming the bedroom door and locking it. He's hyperventilating. He's trapped in the guest room with nothing but a flashlight. For 10 minutes there is silence on the tape. Just David crying, trying to calm himself. Then the knocking starts. It wasn't a frantic pounding. It was rhythmic, calm. For 10 minutes, there is silence on the tape. Just David crying, trying to calm himself. Then the knocking starts. It wasn't a frantic pounding. It was rhythmic, calm. Knock, knock, knock. Go away. I have a gun. Leave me alone. Then, a voice speaks from the other side of the door. This is where the psychological terror sets in. David realizes that whatever is outside the door isn't just trying to get in. It's trying to become him. David looks for a way out. The window. He runs to it, but when he looks out, he freezes. He told the officers that when he looked out the window, he didn't see the trees. He saw the inside of the living room. He was looking into the house. The house had folded in on itself. Outside was inside. David backed away, trembling. The door to the hallway began to splinter. The lock was holding, but the wood was giving way. He grabbed his phone. Miraculously, for a split second, one bar of signal appeared. He dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? You need to send someone. It's inside. Police arrived at the house 14 minutes later. They kicked down the front door. They found the house silent, empty. They searched the ground floor. Nothing. They went upstairs. They found David in the guest room. He was sitting in the corner, facing the wall. The door was locked from the inside. The window was locked. There was no sign of forced entry anywhere. David was holding a digital voice recorder. He was pressing the play button over and over. When they shined their flashlights on him, they saw his lips were moving, but he wasn't speaking. He was mimicking the recorder. The officers tried to get him to respond, but he wouldn't look at them. One officer, Officer Miller, grabbed the recorder to stop it, and that is when they heard the screaming. It wasn't coming from the device. It was coming from the closet. Muffled screaming, banging from inside a small space. The officers drew their weapons. They knew David had been the only one in the room. So who was screaming in the closet? They opened the door. The closet was empty. There was no one inside. But the screaming, it didn't stop. It got louder. It sounded like it was coming from the walls, from the floor, from the air itself. Then, the screaming stopped, and a voice spoke from David. But David's mouth was closed. He let me in. You always let me in. You listen, so I can exist. David collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital, catatonic. When he finally woke up, he had no memory of the 911 call. He had no memory of the closet. He remembered only one thing. He remembered that he wasn't the one who called 911. Investigators analyzed the 911 call with forensic audio specialists. They found something that shouldn't exist. On the recording, you can hear David begging for help, but in the background, there is a second voice. It's the dispatcher. The voice on the 911 call wasn't coming from the house. It was a recording of a different 911 call, a call that hadn't happened yet. The call David made? It was a loop, a signal trapped in the wires. The call where the dispatcher was speaking was placed 3 days after David was hospitalized. It was placed by his wife. She found him in the psych ward, holding a phone that wasn't plugged in. Shh, don't pick up. If you pick up, it comes out. The 911 call you heard at the start? It wasn't David calling for help. It was the thing that took him, calling for you. Check your call log. Did you answer an unknown number tonight?